July 2004. The smell was of freshly mown grass and dung, but Jemima could see neither. She was in a bedroom, she didn't know whose. There were hundreds of bedrooms in this house, most as impersonal as this one, which had a white dust sheet draped over the bed as if someone had been ready to redecorate but had forgotten. She rested her elbows on the windowsill. At home, humid, sweet smells came in through her window when combine harvesters hummed around the cliff-top fields. Here, another wing of the house was opposite, blank sandstone, with a courtyard in between. A wall on the right had an arch in the middle of it. "Done already?" She didn't turn around, but smiled that he'd followed her. "Why was Grandma like that at tea time?" "Annoyed with you." Dad stood next to her. "I imagine it's a shock for Grandma to see Mum again after all these years, love. Let alone the son-in-law and granddaughter she's never met. She could have come to see us any time she liked." He frowned. "Grandma has been very generous in letting us stay. We will show gratitude, please." "Sorry." He was quite proper about things like that. "Grandma has a picture of our house burning down," Jemima wanted to tell him. They were quiet for a minute or so. Dad seemed edgy. Jemima guessed it was Mum's stuff, possibly Grandma stuff. Nothing was happening outside, save for clouds drifting above the house roof. She was hit with more pining for home, and the certainty of just how far away she was from the sights and sounds of cliff tops. She turned from the window. "There's only a load of covered-over furniture in this part of the house. I don't think Grandma pays it much attention." "Jemima, I'm only going to my room, not anywhere that might worry her." Dad shook his head. "Jemima, it's not that. We've just had a phone call from the post office in Bagley." Jemima felt silly at the first thought she'd had, but his distractedness, his frown, a pit opened in her stomach. Then he said it. "There's been a fire at our house. I was sad enough to leave the place this morning. It feels awful to think that right after we'd left..." "A fire? Was it serious?" Dad looked at her, gave her a nod. "I've no idea how it started. Someone having a bonfire on the beach? A hiker chucking a fag end over the hedge? It's been dry recently. I've been racking my brain to think whether I turned the hob off." Jemima inhaled deeply and cleared her throat. "Do you know something weird, Dad?" "What do you know anyway?" Father and daughter looked at one another. Jemima turned back to the window. Dad leaned out to see better. "I know this isn't the first time." "First time for what?" Trying not to think about Grandma's picture, Jemima strained her neck. 2 boys were facing each other in the yard. The younger one, dark-haired, was shaking with the weight of 2 buckets of water and his own fury. "I'll tell Bill." "Bill?" "And Mr. Slipworth." The older boy, much broader of physique, laughed, shaking a mane of shoulder-length blonde hair. "You'll tell him I was cleaning the horse troughs? That's my job." "You put formalin in them, Nathan," the dark-haired boy yelled. "I know. I could smell it." "There's nothing to tell, Arlo." "So you don't care if I do then?" The dark-haired boy set the buckets down. For a moment, Jemima foresaw a grossly mismatched fight as Nathan walked slowly up to Arlo, but the older boy merely stooped to pick up the deposited buckets. He turned away with a dismissive shake of his head. "You need to relax, Arlo." Buckets sloshing at his sides, he disappeared under the arch. The dark-haired boy raced after him, still yelling. Dad's eyes followed them until the sound of their voices had faded. He looked curious. "I guess they work here." "What's formalin?" "Disinfectant. Poisonous if you drink it. That's why the younger chap is worried." Dad stood up, straightening his shirt. "But the blonde one, by the sounds of things, is employed to clean out the horse troughs." He looked at Jemima. "Maybe if you ask Grandma, she'll show you the horses later this week." Jemima said nothing. Dad placed a hand on her shoulder. "Were you saying something?" Jemima thought again, and decided she was being silly. She looked at him forlornly. The house, that's all. Burning down. Literally on the day we left. My house. Dad shrugged. We were never going to get any money for it. Why aren't you even... I am, love. He drew her into a hug. But we couldn't have gone back. She spoke, muffled into his chest. I'd hoped we might. I know. He held her at arm's length again, jollying her. But Grandma came in for us at the right time, didn't she? Jemima pulled a face. I don't think she thinks so. Dad sighed and let her go. Let's give her a chance, Jemima. It's hard for Grandma having people in the house all of a sudden. I'll get her a present to say thank you for all this when I have a moment. What will you buy that with, Dad? Money from the job you don't have? She thought she might have overdone it. I don't mean that, Dad, she almost said, but then he laughed, even if it was with a heavy exhale afterwards. Something'll come up. He kissed the top of her head. Now, are you ready to unpack? Jemima let Dad lead her back to the corridor, remembering many evenings like this when she would end up doing the thing he wanted despite her avoidance tactics. She watched his walk. Only Jemima, in all the world, would know from his brisker pace that he was more anxious than normal right now. But there was a lot on his mind. Grandma's hostility at dinner, wanting to get to Mum, and despite his breeziness, their burned-down house.